Tien Cong Tran, Ph.D. The Diamond Sutra. Interpretation. To understand the Diamond Sutra, we must hold fast 5 following points: the other shore, the inessentiality of beings, no self, supreme perfect enlightenment, and dialectics. To hold fast these 5 points, we must have an insight into the truth of the twofold. There are many interpretations of the Diamond Sutra, including those of Huineng, Osho, and Mu Soeng. I use my philosophical knowledge to cast light into the obscurity or hiddenness of the sutra. The title Diamond. Diamond Sutra is the short title. Diamond is a precious and hard gemstone. It can be used to cut even other metals. So, a more complete title is Cutting Off Diamond Sutra. To cut off what? To cut off dreamy illusion and sorrow. The greatest dreamy illusion of man is his craving, which attaches him to the material shore, and he ignorantly thinks that this attachment is the road to happiness. In reality, the attachment to material leads to lies and sorrow. Material is profit. Profit goes together with deceit, dispute, and war. When attachment to material does not bring profit or brings only a small gain, one becomes unsatisfied, angry, and furious. The reason why a person attaches himself to material is that he thinks material provides happiness. To cut off dreamy illusion and sorrow, the sutra tells people to leave the material shore and to go to the other shore. The other shore is the non-material shore, or the shore of nothing. There is no illusion and no sorrow on the shore of nothing. Why? Because it is thus. The thus reached one is one who has landed on the place of thusness, the place of no illusion and no sorrow. Wisdom is the name of the mind which enters the other shore. The full title of the sutra is Cutting Off Diamond Sutra of Gone to the Other Shore Wisdom. The Buddha sees 2 shores, this shore, the near shore, the material shore, and that shore, the other shore, the far shore, the non-material shore, the shore of nothing. The shore of nothing is the way in man, in man's heart. Why is the way in man called the far shore? The word far does not talk about space, distance, it talks about far with the view of man. Man naturally has a clear view of material things, the material world. Man does not see the way in himself. He needs teaching and cultivation to get a clear view of the other shore. We should note that the metaphysical world of Hinduism belongs to this shore because it is thought from this shore, and it transfers the craving for this world to the craving for the metaphysical world. The main theme of the Diamond Sutra lies in this question: can the thus reached one be seen by his physical body? The answer is no. The Buddha chooses a very easy question. If a body, material, does not make the thus reached one, a man, a thing, so something else makes the thus reached one. When the Buddha puts that question, he has the view of 2 realities, material and the other than material. In the thus reached one there are a body and the other than the body. The Buddha sees the twofold in the thus reached one. If the body does not make the thus reached one, the other than the body makes him. Therefore, in making the thus reached one, not the body but the other than the body plays the principal role. So, to see the thus reached one, we must leave the shore of the body and reach the shore of the other. This other can be named nothing. So, the subject of the Diamond Sutra is going to the other shore. The thus reached one is on the other shore. But is knowing the thus reached one important? There is this importance: cessation of suffering and reaching Nirvana. On this shore there are some joys and many sorrows. According to the Buddha, life is an ocean of sorrows. On the other shore there is no sorrow and there is only joy. Let us take note here that the other shore does not indicate the next life, but the present life. The Buddha sees too much suffering, he looks for the cessation of suffering, he finds it and he teaches the road to the cessation of suffering right in this life. Chapter 1. The text. Thus, have I heard. At one time the Buddha stayed at Anathapindika's garden in Jita Grove in the kingdom of Sravasti, with 1,250 great bhikkhus. When the mealtime came, the Buddha put on his robe, took his bowl, and went into the great city of Sravasti, where he begged for food. After begging from door to door, he came back to his own place and took his meal. When this was done, he put away the robe and the bowl, washed his feet, spread his seat and sat down. Interpretation. Thus, have I heard, these are Ananda's words. Ananda was one of the Buddha's chief disciples and his personal attendant during the last 25 years of life. He was renowned for his prodigious eidetic memory. Thus have I heard is found at the beginning of each of the sutras in the Pali Canon. According to tradition, immediately after the Buddha's death, all the senior bhikkhus gathered to find common agreement on what the Buddha had preached. Ananda was the main reciter of the Buddha's words. The Diamond Sutra, belonging to the Mahayana school, was composed 700 or 800 years after Ananda's lifetime. But, according to the Mahayanist contention, it contained the Buddha's words and so reflected the transmission in a teacher-to-student oral culture. It was the Buddha's own teaching. Bhikkhu means beggar, one who lives by alms. Begging represents two main points: 1. The material world is not important, and 2. The self, ego, is not important. On the contrary, the other shore or nothing is important. We know that the historical Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, having abandoned a life of pleasure and status of prince, lived a life of an alms mendicant. He is the good example of this world is meaningless. The other shore or nothing is important. Chapter 2. The text. Then the elder Subhuti, who was among the assembly, rose from his seat, bared his right shoulder, knelt on his right knee, respectfully folded his hands, and addressed the Buddha thus. World-honored one, it is wonderful to find someone like you. You mind the Bodhisattvas so much and instruct them so well. World-honored one, in case good men and good women raise the mind for reaching the supreme perfect enlightenment, how should they abide in it and how should they keep their thoughts under control? The Buddha said, well said, indeed, Subhuti. As you say, the thus reached one minds the Bodhisattvas very much and instructs them very well. But now listen attentively and I will tell you, in case good men and good women raise the mind for reaching the supreme perfect enlightenment, how they should abide in it and how they should keep their thoughts under control. So be it, world-honored one. I wish to listen to you. Interpretation. Subhuti is one of 10 main disciples of the Buddha. A bodhisattva is a person, or living being, who has attained enlightenment and is helping others on the way to enlightenment. The Buddha is also called world-honored one, one who is honored and loved by all the world. The Buddha is also named the thus reached one. He reaches thusness. What does thus mean? Thus here means truth, because truth cannot be talked about, it is named thus, thusness. If we ask why is it so, there is no answer to this why. He who enters there, the other shore, see thus. The Diamond Sutra is a dialogue between the Buddha and his disciple Subhuti. Indeed, the Diamond Sutra is a sutra of Mahayana Buddhism. A high monk should be the author of the Diamond Sutra. He invites the Buddha and Subhuti as two members of the conversation. He would like to show that the thought of the Diamond Sutra is the Buddha's thought. Minding is helping to protect the thoughts of gone to the other shore wisdom. Instructing is instructing things to be done. Enlightenment is the recognition of the truth. Enlightenment is the opposite of ignorance. According to the Buddha, men daily live in ignorance. Ignorance is non-recognition of the truth. Supreme is second to none, highest, nothing above. Perfect is complete, whole. Supreme perfect enlightenment is highest complete recognition of the truth. We cannot go beyond that limit. What is this truth? This truth is, life is an ocean of suffering, and there is a path to the cessation of suffering or to nirvana. In other words, this truth is, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. The Buddha is enlightened. That does not mean he has become God and knows everything in the universe in the past, in the present and in the future, but that means he has attained the supreme perfect recognition of suffering and the path to the cessation of suffering. Good is good but not yet enlightened. Here good men and good women are chosen to be led to enlightenment. Abiding in it is dwelling in it in the manner that leads to supreme perfect enlightenment. Keeping under control is guiding and conquering. When does supreme perfect enlightenment happen? When, speaking according to the Gone to the Other Shore Wisdom Sutra, gone to the other shore, landed on the other shore happens. Going to the other shore is leaving this shore and leap to the other shore. Leap is not bringing anything from this shore. Leap is the most important step. Chapter 3. The text. The Buddha said to Subhuti, the great bodhisattvas should keep their thoughts under control as follows. All living beings, be they born from eggs, born from wombs, born from moisture, born from transmutation, be they material, immaterial, with thinking, without thinking, with neither thinking nor non-thinking, I must lead them to enter the ultimate nirvana and to attain the final liberation. Interpretation. Great Bodhisattva emphasizes the meaning of Bodhisattva. The Buddha uses I. The Buddha is not God. He does not possess the almighty power to lead all living beings into nirvana. So I indicates his teachings. His teachings can lead all beings into nirvana. Living beings, as they are enumerated, consist of all living beings in three domains: animals, men, and gods. The Buddha conceives four kinds of birth: born from eggs, born from wombs, born from moisture, born from transmutation. Born from eggs, birds and reptiles; born from wombs, persons and mammals; born from moisture, worms and insects; born from transmutation, miraculously born, born without conception or embryonic growth, gods and ghosts. Because there is rebirth, living beings can be reborn in those three domains. But only man is the living being who has the ability to attain the final liberation. To be material is to have the body, to be immaterial is not to have the body. With thinking indicates a class of beings with sense organs, with non-thinking indicates a class of devas who live in the higher realms of existence, with neither thinking nor non-thinking indicates the class of devas of the highest realm of existence. According to Buddhism there are 31 realms of existence. Let's remember all living beings. If only man is the living being who has the ability to attain the last liberation, any other being must be reborn as a human being to get the chance to attain the ultimate nirvana. The Diamond Sutra seems to incline toward the liberation after death. We want to follow the tendency that the Buddha teaches suffering and the cessation of suffering in this life. But any liberation is liberation. However, if we want liberation, right now we must go to the other shore. It is difficult to say that the Diamond Sutra talks about going to the other shore after death. The ultimate nirvana is the nirvana without remainder. There are two nirvanas, nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. According to the popular interpretation, the nirvana without remainder is the nirvana after death or without body. The nirvana with remainder is nirvana in this life or with the body. We can understand that the nirvana without remainder is the nirvana without any clinging to five aggregates, and the nirvana with remainder is the nirvana with a clinging to five aggregates. Therefore we can attain the nirvana without remainder right in this life. The text. Though immeasurable, innumerable, unlimited beings are liberated, in reality no beings are liberated. Why, Subhuti? If a bodhisattva retains the idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a soul, he is indeed not a bodhisattva. Interpretation. To understand this paragraph, we have to hold fast dialectics and know self. 1. Dialectics. Dialectics is dialogue with oneself or with others. Proof or reason is brought up in dialectics. Why is proof brought up? Because there is obscurity and apparent contradiction on the dialogue. Dialectics aims at clarifying the contradiction. Indeed, there is no contradiction. For example, this statement, a chalice is not a chalice and therefore it is called a chalice. This statement seems obscure and contradictory. How does such a statement happen? Is it not from an abnormal mind? Dialectics is the method of discovery of the reason for the statement. The Diamond Sutra talks about going to the other shore. A chalice is composed of material, crystal, or gold, silver. People think that crystal, material, makes a chalice. But to the author of the Diamond Sutra, such thinking is wrong. Only crystal does not make a chalice, therefore, we can say a chalice, as crystal, is not a chalice. So what chalice is a chalice? When a chalice contains wine that mortal men offer to immortal divinities, it is a chalice. Therefore, a chalice, as containing wine that mortal men offer to immortal divinities, is a chalice. Containing wine that mortal men offer to immortal divinities indicates the manner of living or the way of men. Not material, but the human way itself makes a chalice. The human way is very essential. Life is what the way constitutes. A person is sorrowful because his, her, way leads to sorrow. A person is happy because his, her, way leads to happiness. We must abandon the shore of material, crystal, and leap to the shore of the way to see a chalice. Going to the other shore of the author of the Diamond Sutra lies in the leap. Dialectics is the method of discovery of obscurity and apparent contradiction. Hearing of going to the other shore, many people think that it is hard to understand and to practice. Indeed, going to the other shore is simple like that, abandoning the material shore and leaping to the shore of the way, right here and now, not waiting until the next life. And that is the end of suffering. The Diamond Sutra seeks to show us the way or the road to the cessation of suffering. The statement, a chalice is not a chalice and therefore it is called a chalice, can be explained as a chalice, made by the way, which is not a chalice, made by crystal, is a true chalice. 2. No self. No self means there is not a self which is understood as a person. Why is it possible to say like that? This seems hard to understand and unacceptable. Without food and without drink in 2 or 3 days, a person will know whether there is a self. The Buddha was a prince. When he attained perfect enlightenment, he was a beggar. So, with no self, what does the Buddha want to say? The Buddha teaches suffering and the cessation of suffering. With his enlightenment, he sees this shore or the shore of material is suffering, and the other shore or the shore of nothing, shore of the way, is the cessation of suffering. He sees that there is no happy self on this shore. Life is an ocean of sorrows. When living, a person looks for a happy self and a happy self on this shore. This is ignorance. On this shore there is only a sorrowful self or a self with some joys and many sorrows, not a happy self a person looks for. So, is there a self on the other shore? There is no sorrowful self on the other shore. On the other shore there is only a self without suffering. But because a self without suffering is different from an ordinary self of man, it can be named no self. Looking for a self without suffering in the ordinary self is like looking for the moon in the bottom of an ocean. An enlightened person sees no self without suffering in the ordinary self of man. So, no self means no happy self. Why does the Buddha say, though immeasurable, innumerable, unlimited beings are liberated, in reality no beings are liberated? What else is more difficult to understand than this saying? The Buddha utters these words because he sees the twofold. So, in order to understand them, we have to depend on the twofold. Living beings before entering Nirvana are material. Living beings after having entered Nirvana are material plus nothing, nothingness, with nothing as the main part. So, there are two kinds of living beings, a living being which is material and is attached to material, and a living being which is the place of the appearance of nothing. In the above-mentioned sentence, beings understood as material beings. Who can be liberated? Material beings. Because when a being is liberated, he is not a material being anymore. If we understand living beings as living beings of the realm of nothing, there are liberated living beings. Indeed, because there is no self in the realm of nothingness, we can say there are no living beings there. The self or ego is often accepted as real. Descartes had doubt, but he was unable to have doubt about the self. I think, so I exist. Then persons, the self and others, are often accepted as real. Then living beings are often accepted as real. Likewise, the immortal metaphysical things or souls are often accepted as real. The Buddha says that a self, a person, a living being or a soul is inessential. A bodhisattva never accepts that it constitutes the substance of a thing. Nothing is the essential part that constitutes the substance of a thing. A bodhisattva is the one who has attained the supreme perfect enlightenment, the one who sees that nothing constitutes the substance of a thing, the one who sees the truth. A bodhisattva does not, of course, have any idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. A bodhisattva is liberated from suffering, and suffering lies in a self, a person, a living being and a soul. Chapter 4. The text. Furthermore, Subhuti, when a bodhisattva practices charity, he should not dwell on any idea, that is to say, he should not dwell on the idea of form to practice charity, nor should he dwell on the idea of a sound, a smell, a taste, a touch or an object. Subhuti, thus should a bodhisattva practice charity without dwelling on any idea of form. Why? When a bodhisattva practices charity without dwelling on any idea, his merit will be beyond measure and thought. Interpretation. Object is object of perception or thought. Practicing charity is one of the 6 perfections of a bodhisattva. The 6 perfections are charity, ethical conduct, patience, effort, meditation, and wisdom. Charity is the first perfection. The Buddha speaks of the first perfection. The same can be said of the 5 other perfections. A bodhisattva is on the way of nothing. His acts cannot rely on the material realm, a form, a sound, a smell, a taste, a touch or an object. If we still think of material when practicing charity, we are not on the way of nothing. We should take notice that a practicing charity that relies on a form, a sound, a smell, a taste, a touch or an object is still better than a non-practicing charity. The receivers of charity are persons in hardship. The 4 abodes of Nirvana are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy and equality. Charity to persons in need is in harmony with the 4 abodes. Merit will be beyond measure and thought is countless merit on the way to the realm of nothing. This is not merit in the material world. Merit is good deeds that lead to happiness of the new life in the shore of enlightenment. Merit can be blessing or happiness itself. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Can you measure the space extending eastward? No, world-honored one, I cannot. Subhuti, can you measure the space extending toward the south, the west, the north, above or below? No, world-honored one, I cannot. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva does not dwell on any idea when practicing charity, his merit is beyond measure like space. Subhuti, a bodhisattva should let his mind abide in my teaching. Interpretation. The Buddha sees the realm of nothing. He loves it immensely. He often uses the examples of beyond measure to express the countless value of the realm of nothing. The Buddha talks about space. Space is beyond limit, measure. Such an open and infinite space may be the image of the domain of nothing, of the other shore. Practicing charity is a very important road. It cuts off craving and attachment to the worldly property. It softens pains of poverty of those are poor, hungry, thirsty, homeless. Chapter 5. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Is it possible to recognize the thus reached one by means of bodily form? No, world-honored one. It is impossible to recognize the thus reached one by means of bodily form. Why? As the thus reached one says, a bodily form is not a bodily form. The Buddha said to Subhuti, all that has a form is illusory. When form is perceived as non-form, the thus reached one is recognized. Interpretation. It is not possible to recognize the thus reached one by means of bodily form. It is the realm of nothing, the mind of compassion that constitutes the thus reached one. What does a bodily form is not a bodily form mean? The bodily form that represents the thus reached one is not the bodily form understood as body or flesh, and bone, blood, and so forth. So, the bodily form has 2 meanings, 1 bodily form as body or flesh, 2 bodily form as place of the appearance of the realm of nothing. When the bodily form is seen in the second meaning, the thus reached one is recognized. Form, colored form, bodily form, material, is illusory. That is to say that form does not play the essential role in the making of the thus reached one. When form is perceived as non-form, the thus reached one is recognized. When the form of the thus reached one is not perceived as material, but as non-form or nothing, the thus reached one is recognized. In or through the form of the thus reached one, we must see his non-form. His non-form lies in his form, but even so his non-form is not his form. Because form is used in the material realm, non-form is the name of form in the realm of nothing. Chapter 6. The text. Subhuti said to the Buddha, world-honored one, in times to come, when people hear this teaching, will they have a true faith in it? The Buddha said to Subhuti, "Do not talk that way." 500 years after the passing of the thus reached one, there will be people who, having practiced rules of morality and thus done good deeds, happen to hear this teaching will rouse a true faith in it. Such people, as you know, have planted the root of their merit not only with 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 Buddhas but with infinite thousands of myriads of Buddhas. Those who, hearing this teaching, rouse, for even 1 second, a pure and clear faith are all known to the thus reached one and recognized by him as having acquired an immeasurable amount of merit. Why? Because all these people are free from the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. They are free from the idea of a thing as well as of a no thing. Why? Because if they cherish the idea of a thing, they are attached to a self, a person, a living being or a soul. If they cherish the idea of a no thing, they are attached to a self, a person, a living being or a soul. You should not cherish the idea of a thing, you should not cherish the idea of a no thing. For this reason, the thus reached one always teaches thus, "O bhikkhus, know that my teaching is like a raft. Even a thing is cast aside, much more a no thing." Interpretation. According to the Buddha, 500 years to come, there will be people who, having practiced rules of morality and thus done good deeds, will believe in his words. They have planted the root of blessings in their infinite past lives. If in the past there were such people, in the future, because of their rebirth, there will be such people. They know that what is called a self, a person, a living being or a soul does not constitute the truth. The Buddha's words will not be able to perish in the future. The Buddha speaks about the infinite value of his words. If we rouse a pure and clear faith even for 1 second in his words, we gain an immeasurable amount of merit. They are free from the idea of a thing as well as of a no thing. A thing or material does not belong to the truth, this we have said many times. Material lies in the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. But what about a no thing? Is no thing not free from a thing? The Buddha says, if they cherish the idea of a no thing, they are attached to a self, a person, a living being or a soul. Why? Because a no thing is an idea derived from a thing, they look at a thing and derive from it a no thing. Therefore a no thing harbors the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. This means, to think something other than a thing, we cannot think it from a thing. The negative expression something other than a thing, is not this thing or that thing is dangerous, because it still grasps at the idea of a thing. Even the words like non-material, immaterial, the realm of non-material, nothing or the realm of nothing are dangerous. Why? Because those words implicate in a certain manner a look from material. They arouse the idea of something that we can attain. We must keep in our mind that nothing is not an object or a domain outside man, like a stone or a space. Because a no thing is an idea derived from a self, a person, a living being or a soul, the Buddha says, therefore you should not cherish the idea of a thing, you should not cherish the idea of a no thing. He emphasizes further, even a thing is cast aside, much more a no thing. All thoughts, which derive a no thing, the metaphysical, from a thing, the physical, do not belong to nothing. With no thing we can think of void. But nothing is not void, it is a reality. This reality is the main part in the making of a thing. Nothing does not lead us to an empty domain, but on the contrary to the bosom of a thing in its essence is nothing and is not material. If a no thing is understood as not a thing, empty, we have to cast at once away this no thing. We enter into nothing in order to enter into a true thing. No thing denotes the metaphysical world of Hinduism. The metaphysical is no thing. However, according to the Buddha, they crave for the material world, and from the material world they derive a metaphysical world so that they can continue their craving. Believing in the metaphysical world is also believing in a self, a person, a living being and a soul. The metaphysical world is very dangerous. Why? Because at some time they find out that the metaphysical world is only something abstract and valueless. At that time, they cast away the metaphysical or no thing to return to the physical or thing. The metaphysical also causes a misconception that there is nothing besides the physical and the metaphysical. The Buddha sees that, besides the physical and the metaphysical, there is another domain, the other shore. Even a thing is cast aside, much more a no thing. The concrete material world is cast away, much more the abstract metaphysical world. We need to say goodbye to thing and no thing and leap to the other shore. A same story happens in the West. The West derives the metaphysical world from the physical world. The West sees that the human heart contrives nothing but wicked schemes all day long. That is the reason why there are Christianity and God in the sky. But then Nietzsche declares God is dead. God is the symbol of the metaphysical world. It is very sorry for he who believes in the metaphysical world. Nietzsche asks for a return to the physical world and the result is an evil and desolate world. For Heidegger, the evening or decline of the West has made its appearance. Heidegger catches the view that being is beyond both the physical world and the metaphysical world. He hopes that the holy and God of the shore of being will save the world. Chapter 7. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Has the thus reached one attained the supreme perfect enlightenment? Does he have something to preach? Subhuti said, World-honored one, as I understand your teaching, there is no something called supreme perfect enlightenment nor is there any fixed doctrine for the thus reached one to preach. Why? Because the doctrine he preaches is ungraspable and unpreachable, it is neither a thing nor a no thing. How is it so? Because all wise men belong to non-doing and therefore they are distinct from one another. Interpretation. The supreme perfect enlightenment can be understood as a state of mind existing in some place and we, including the Buddha, can reach it. Indeed, there is not such a fixed state of mind. The way is as it appears to us. The way is the no way when it appears as no way, it is the way at the first level when it appears as the way at the first level, it is the way at the second level when it appears as the way at the second level. There is no fixed supreme perfect way at some place. Therefore, there is no supreme perfect enlightenment at some place that the Buddha has attained. So, when we say, there is no supreme perfect enlightenment, we have to understand it as there is no supreme perfect enlightenment understood as something existing at some place. Therefore, there is the supreme perfect enlightenment if it is understood in its true meaning. There is a doctrine to preach can be understood as there is a doctrine about something to preach. Because the supreme perfect enlightenment is not something, there is no doctrine about the supreme perfect enlightenment. Therefore the Buddha has no fixed doctrine to preach. Fixed emphasizes the separate, independent existence, like, for example, a stone. There is no such fixed doctrine about the supreme perfect enlightenment. If it is called a doctrine, it is an ungraspable and unpreachable doctrine. It is neither a thing nor a no thing. We can grasp and preach a thing and a no thing. But we are not able to grasp and preach the supreme perfect enlightenment. It is often said that nothing is beyond language. The Buddha's words are like a finger pointing to nothing. Regarding nothing itself, only he who has attained it knows it. This nothing is the way. And the way is an event which is always happening, that is always changing. Nothing or the way is not something fixed that we can grasp and express. The domain of nothing extends infinitely. The Buddha does not have a doctrine of nothing. But he has a doctrine of the path that leads to nothing. The Buddha's words are like a raft that leads us to leave behind the ocean of birth and death. The Buddha does not preach nothing, but he preaches the raft that leads to the other shore. Of course, he who has reached the other shore does not need the raft anymore. Because all wise men belong to non-doing and therefore they are distinct from one another. The Dharma of non-doing does not belong to the domain of material, the Dharma of doing, but it belongs to the domain of nothing. Non-doing has different levels. Each wise man attains a non-doing at a moment. Each wise man responds in a certain manner to the voice of nothing. And because they respond differently, they are distinct from each other. In other words, there are many levels of wisdom. The fact all wise men belong to non-doing and therefore they are distinct from one another is an explanation of the fact the doctrine the Buddha preaches is ungraspable and unpreachable. The Dharma of non-doing is not a separate and fixed thing, it appears differently in wise men. We do not know it so exactly that it can be grasped and preached. But we can preach the path to the Dharma of non-doing. The word non-doing is worth of our attention. We have doing and non-doing. Doing belongs to this shore and non-doing belongs to the other shore. Doing is action and non-doing is no action with action understood as action on this shore. However, it is possible to say that with non-doing there is action understood as action on the other shore. Chapter 8. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone fills the 3,000 chiliocosms with the 7 precious jewels and gives them away in charity, will not the merit he thus obtained be great? Subhuti said, very great, indeed, world-honored one. Why? Because his merit has the quality of non-merit, therefore the thus reached one speaks of the merit as being great. Interpretation. A chiliocosm consists of billion or billions of worlds, like a galaxy. So, 3,000 chiliocosms consist of very many worlds. The 7 precious jewels can be enumerated as gold, silver, coral, gems, diamonds, pearls and lapis lazuli. He who gives away in charity so many precious jewels gains of course the great merit. Subhuti explains the reason why it is a great merit. According to him that merit has the quality of non-merit. A merit often belongs to this shore, but when it aims to lead to the other shore, it has the quality of non-merit or has the quality of not being merit in this world. Because merit is used to express the merit on this shore, so non-merit is used to express the merit on the other shore. So the quality of non-merit expresses the quality of non-belonging to this shore but belonging to the other shore. Not belonging to this shore is great. For that reason, great merit is used to indicate merit leading to the other shore. So great indicates the other shore. The great mantra is the mantra that leads to the other shore. The great learning of Confucius is the learning about the other shore or the way. The text. The Buddha said, if there is a person who holds even one gatha of 4 lines in this sutra, and preaches it to others, his merit will be superior to the one just mentioned. Because, Subhuti, all the Buddhas and their supreme perfect enlightenment come from this sutra. Subhuti, what is known as the teaching of the Buddha is not the teaching of the Buddha. Interpretation. Gatha of 4 lines does not indicate clearly the exact 4 lines. So, it can indicate any 4 lines, or any short paragraph. The Buddha sees nothing, nothingness. He loves nothing infinitely. This sutra talks about nothing. Preaching 4 lines of this sutra gains more merit than giving in charity the precious jewels that filled 3,000 chiliocosms. Giving in charity so many precious jewels does not lead to the supreme perfect enlightenment. But from this sutra all Buddhas attain the supreme perfect enlightenment. What is known as the teaching of the Buddha is not the teaching of the Buddha. The first teaching of the Buddha is the teaching of the Buddha or the Buddha's word, and the second teaching of the Buddha is the teaching of the Buddha land or nothing. The teaching of the Buddha is not the teaching of the Buddha land or nothing. The teaching of the Buddha is only the raft that leads us beyond the ocean of birth and death to enter into Nirvana. This teaching is not the teaching of Nirvana. Chapter 9. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a stream enterer think, I have obtained the fruit of stream entering? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one, he does not. Why? Because stream enterer means one who enters the stream, but in truth there is no entering here. A true stream enterer does not enter color, sound, smell, taste, touch and object. Interpretation. A stream enterer, a once returner, a non-returner, and an arhat are 4 fruits on the way to enlightenment. A stream enterer has overcome a bundle of obstacles and has entered the stream of Nirvana. He will not be reborn into the subhuman realm, he will be reborn 7 times into the human realm and the celestial realm, then he will attain the final enlightenment and eternally overcome suffering. Stream enterer indicates entering the stream. Entering the stream often means entering the material stream. In the realm of nothing there is no stream of color, colored form, sound, smell, taste, touch and object to enter. If entering the stream is thus understood, there is no entering the stream for the stream enterer. However, if entering the stream is understood as entering the stream of enlightenment, there is an entering the stream for the stream enterer. Therefore stream enterer means one who enters the stream of enlightenment. But the stream enterer is not able to say I have attained the fruit of stream entering because such a saying relies on a self, a person, a living being or a soul. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a once returner think, I have obtained the fruit of once returning? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one, he does not. Why? Because once returner means one who goes and returns for once, but in truth there is no going and returning for once here, therefore, he is called once returner. Interpretation. A once returner goes further than a stream enterer, has overcome more obstacles and will be reborn once into the human realm, or the celestial realm, then will attain the final enlightenment and eternally be free from suffering. A once returner means one who goes and returns for once. Going and returning for once is often understood as going and returning for once in the material stream. In the realm of nothing there is no stream of color, sound, smell, taste, touch and object for going and returning. If going and returning for once is thus understood, there is no going and returning for once for the once returner. However, if going and returning for once is understood as going and returning for once in the stream of enlightenment, there is a going and returning for once for a once returner. Therefore once returner means one who returns for once in the stream of enlightenment. Stream of enlightenment has many levels. But the once returner is not able to say I have attained the fruit of once returning, because such a saying relies on a self, a person, a living being or a soul. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a non-returner think, I have obtained the fruit of non-returning? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one, he does not. Why? Because non-returner means one who does not return, but in truth there is no non-returning here, therefore, he is called non-returner. A non-returner goes further than a stream enterer, and a once-returner overcomes most of obstacles, will not be reborn and enter nirvana. Non-returner means one who will not return. Non-returning is non-returning into the material stream. Because there is no material stream anymore, there is no non-returning, in truth there is no non-returning here. Therefore, he is called non-returner. But the non-returner is not able to say I have attained the fruit of non-returning, because such a saying relies on a self, a person, a living being or a soul. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Does an arhat think, I have obtained the fruit of arhatship? Subhuti said, no, world-honored one, he does not. Why? Because there is not a thing to be called arhat. If, world-honored one, an arhat thinks I have obtained arhatship, this means that he is attached to the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. World-honored one, you have often said that I am the foremost of those who have attained non-contentious absorption, that I am the foremost of those arhats who are liberated from unwholesome desires. But, world-honored one, I dwell in no thought that I have attained arhatship. If I did, you would not tell me, Subhuti, you are one who enjoys the life of a peaceful dwelling. Just because Subhuti is not at all attached to that life, he is said to be the one who enjoys the life of peaceful dwelling. Interpretation. An arhat overcomes all obstacles and attains the final enlightenment right in this life. But arhat is a name invented by people on this shore. An arhat himself does not say that he has obtained arhatship. Because if he said that, he would be attached to the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. There must be a self so that one can say that one has obtained the fruit of arhatship. But in the sphere of nothing there is no self. Non-contentious absorption is absorption in tranquility of non-contention between truth and falsehood. If there is no falsehood, there is no contention, there is, if we can say, only truth. Unwholesome desires are desires in the material realm, there is contention in these desires. The sphere of nothing is the sphere of peaceful dwelling. Peaceful means there is nobody. Subhuti has attained the peaceful dwelling and sees that there is no subhuti, and therefore there is no subhuti attached to that dwelling. If there is nobody, there is no contention and there is only peace. Chapter 10. The text. The Buddha said to Subhuti, Subhuti, what do you think? When the thus reached one was with Dipankara Buddha in the past, did he attain anything on the way of truth? No, world-honored one, he did not. The thus reached one while with Dipankara Buddha did not attain anything on the way of truth. Subhuti, what do you think? Does a Bodhisattva adorn a Buddha land? No, world-honored one, he does not. Why? Because adorning a Buddha land is not adorning a Buddha land, and therefore it is called adorning a Buddha land. So Subhuti, all bodhisattvas should give rise to such a pure mind. They should not give rise to a mind dwelling on any idea of color, they should not dwell on the idea of sound, smell, taste, touch an object, they should not dwell on the idea of anything whatsoever. Subhuti, if someone were to have a body as large as Mount Sumeru, what do you think, would this body be very large? Subhuti said, very large, indeed, world-honored one. Why? Because the Buddha teaches that what is not a body is known as a large body. Interpretation. In the realm of nothing there is not a thing. That is the reason why the thus reached one did not attain anything on the way of truth. It is often said about dialectics in the Gone to the Other Shore wisdom. Our mind usually sees things through the principle of identity, A is A cannot be B. But, under the light of that wisdom, we go beyond the principle of identity, A is not A. Why? Because under the light of cause and effect relationship, A is made up by the complex of B, C, D, E, F, therefore, according to the principle of contradiction, when we do not see A as A, we realize the true essence of A. Therefore, seeing the true essence of A is, according to the principle of synthesis, seeing that A and the components of A are one. There is a monk who says, before meditation I see a mountain is a mountain, during meditation, I see a mountain is not a mountain, after meditation, I see a mountain is a mountain. If the saying is explained according to the above way of explanation, it is as follows. Before meditation I see a mountain is a mountain because I do not know that a mountain is composed of many elements united by cause and effect relationship. During meditation I see a mountain is not a mountain because I know that a mountain is composed of many elements united by cause and effect relationship. After meditation I see a mountain is a mountain, but this mountain is composed of many elements united by cause and effect relationship. Thus said, meditation brings a more scientific view. Modern physics proves that my meditative view is correct. So meditative knowledge precedes knowledge of modern physics. Such an interpretation may be considered as the most erroneous one of the Buddha's thoughts. Seeing a separate thing or seeing a thing in its components or in the total material universe is still on this shore, still not reaching the other shore. Such a seeing is not seeing the other shore, the shore of non-material. The body does not make the thus reached one. If we put this body in its components or in the total material universe, it still does not make the thus reached one. It is the other than the body that makes the thus reached one. Indeed, if we want to talk about dialectics, this dialectics is to be understood as follows. Before meditation I see a mountain is a mountain, thing. Mountain here indicates material, stone, wood, soil. During meditation I see a mountain is not a mountain, thing. Mountain as material does not make a mountain, thing. What is other material or nothing makes a mountain, thing. After meditation I see a mountain is a mountain, thing. Mountain here indicates not only material but also nothing, with nothing as the essential part. This is, if we want to call, the dialectics of wisdom. Dialectics is dialogue of the mind with itself. Before meditation the mind thinks material is mountain. During meditation the mind realizes material is not mountain, after meditation the mind sees nothing in material is mountain. So, are mountains, things, before meditation and after meditation not the same? They are mountains, they are things, they have the same name, but they are different. A mountain before meditation can be a mountain containing a lot of material to be explored. A mountain after meditation can be a scenic beauty in which is present heaven, earth, spirit, God. Before meditation man can be laboring animal, after meditation man can be holy animal. The following question can be raised: if there is no self, person, mind, is there a mountain? Some reply yes, without a self, a mountain is still there. It seems that it is truly so. Others reply no, without a self, a mountain is not there. Without a person, how can we say there is a mountain there? It seems that it is reasonable. In the view of the twofold, we have the following answer: if there is no self, there is a heap of rocks, and if there is a self, there is a mountain. In the Diamond Sutra there are a lot of dialectical sentences. 1. Adorning a Buddha land is not adorning a Buddha land, and therefore it is called adorning a Buddha land. Firstly, adorning a Buddha land by material, building statues, pillars, planting flowers, adorning with gold, is adorning a Buddha land. Then, adorning a Buddha land by material is not adorning a Buddha land. Finally, adorning a Buddha land by nothing, the way, is adorning a Buddha land. There are two manners of adorning a Buddha land: adorning by the material shore and adorning by the way or the other shore. If we talk about 3 or 4 manners, we do not have an insight into the truth of the twofold. According to the twofold, adorning the Buddha land by the material shore, even by gold, jade, big temple, big statue, is not adorning the Buddha land yet. Adorning the Buddha land by the other shore is a true adorning. Therefore, an adorning the Buddha land which is not adorning by the material shore is a true adorning. The other shore is infinite, including 4 abodes in Nirvana: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. In the conversation, Subhuti, what do you think? Does a Bodhisattva adorn a Buddha land? No, world-honored one, he does not. Adorning the Buddha land is understood as adorning by the material shore. 2. All dust particles are not dust particles, and therefore they are called dust particles. Firstly, dust particles as material are dust particles, things. Then, dust particles as material are not dust particles, things. Finally, dust particles as place of the appearance of nothing are dust particles, things. 3. All chiliocosms are not chiliocosms, and therefore they are called chiliocosms. Firstly, material makes a chiliocosm, then, material does not make a chiliocosm, finally, nothing in material makes a chiliocosm. 4. What the thus reached one calls the 32 marks are not marks, and therefore they are called 32 marks. Firstly, 32 marks as body are 32 marks, then, 32 marks as body are not 32 marks, finally, 32 marks as place of the presence of nothing are 32 marks. Chapter 11. The text. Subhuti, regarding the grains of sand in the Ganges River, suppose there are as many Ganges rivers as those grains of sand, what do you think? Will not the grains of sand in all those rivers be many? Subhuti said, very many, indeed, world-honored one. Those Ganges rivers will be many, much more the grains of sand in those Ganges rivers. Subhuti, I would like to ask you now. If there is a good man or a good woman who fills the 3,000 chiliocosms, which are as many as the grains of sand in those Ganges rivers, with the 7 precious jewels and gives them all away in charity, will not this merit be very large? Subhuti said, very large, indeed, world-honored one. The Buddha said to Subhuti, if a good man or a good woman holds even one gatha of 4 lines in this sutra and expounds it to others, his or her merit will be superior to the one just mentioned. Interpretation. The Buddha loves this sutra extremely because it contains the utmost truth and leads living beings to the realm of bliss. Chapter 12. The text. Furthermore, Subhuti, wherever this sutra or even one gatha of 4 lines is preached, that place will be respected by all beings, men, gods, asuras, as if it were the Buddha's own Chaitya. If a land is so respected, how much more a person who holds and recites this sutra. Subhuti, you should know that such a person achieves the highest, foremost and most wonderful deed. Wherever this sutra is kept, that place is regarded as in it there is the presence of the Buddha or a venerable disciple of his. Interpretation. Wherever the precious sutra is preached is the shrine of the Buddha, the place of the presence of the Buddha and of his disciples. Whoever holds and recites the sutra achieves the highest, foremost and most wonderful deed. The Buddha loves this sutra extremely much because it leads beings to leave behind the ocean of suffering and the shore of ignorance. There are 3 realms, of humans, of gods, and of asuras. Asuras are above humans and below gods. Chapter 13. The text. At that time, Subhuti said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, what will this sutra be called and how should we hold it?" The Buddha said to Subhuti, "This sutra will be called the cutting off diamond gone to the other shore wisdom, and by this name you hold it." The reason is that, Subhuti, according to the Buddha's teaching, gone to the other shore wisdom is not gone to the other shore wisdom, and therefore it is called gone to the other shore wisdom. Subhuti, what do you think? Is there anything which the thus reached one teaches? Subhuti said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, the thus reached one has nothing to teach." Interpretation. Diamond is one of the most precious jewels. Moreover, it has the ability to cut iron. Diamond denotes the preciousness and ability to cut. Cutting here is cutting off illusions and suffering. Therefore, diamond is cutting off diamond. The greatest illusion of men is the attachment to material. The attachment to material leads to telling lies and suffering. Material is profit. Profit brings with it rivalry, war and fraud. If we attach ourselves to material and we gain nothing or little, we will be sad, angry, and suffer. We attach ourselves to material because we think that material constitutes the essence of man. We daily live in fallenness or tend to be existentialists. In order to cut off illusions and suffering, the sutra tells us to leave the material shore behind and go to the other shore. The other shore is the shore of non-material or nothing. In the shore of nothing there are no illusions, no sadness, and no suffering. Why? Because the fact is such. The thus reached one is the one who has thus reached, who has reached such a place of no illusions and no suffering. There is no answer to why. He who has reached that place sees thus. Wisdom is the name of the mind that has reached the other shore. Therefore, the complete name of the sutra is cutting off diamond gone to the other shore wisdom. The Buddha told Subhuti to hold the sutra by its name. But in order to hold it, we must understand it correctly. The main point is gone to the other shore. There is a tendency to explain that nothing is absolute and so total, all. Absolute must be total. If it is not total, it is not absolute. And total also includes the material world or this shore. However, if we leave the material shore to reach the shore of nothing, and now if we want the shore of nothing also includes the material shore, how can we overcome suffering because, as it is said, material is the root of suffering? So we have to see the twofold. The other shore is the shore of nothing, and in nothing there is not material at all. If nothing is absolute, absolute does not mean all. Absolute means not depending on, not attached to, and not depending on, not attached to is not depending on material, not attached to material. Absolute is separate from the material shore, free, gone to the other shore, liberated, and enlightened. The absolute mind is the mind with itself, not depending on material. Enlightened is no longer attached to material. If enlightened and still wanting to embrace material, how can there be enlightened? There must be diamond to cut off the material shore. Jesus said, "No one can serve two masters. He will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon." Gone to the other shore wisdom is not gone to the other shore wisdom, and therefore it is called gone to the other shore wisdom. Firstly, wisdom is wisdom that thinks about material, about the first and final causes of material, about the cause and effect relationship of material, and thinks that it is gone to the other shore wisdom. Even wisdom that thinks about the elusiveness of things is also wisdom that thinks about material, even though this thinking attains many points proved by modern physics. Then, wisdom realizes that wisdom that thinks material is not gone to the other shore wisdom. Material is material and nothing is nothing. Wisdom that thinks material is not wisdom that has reached the shore of nothing. Finally, wisdom that thinks nothing appearing in material is gone to the other shore wisdom. Let us repeat this idea: nothing is not material, but appears in material and needs material as place of its appearance. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Are there many dust particles in the 3,000 chiliocosms? Subhuti said, very many, world-honored one. Subhuti, the thus reached one teaches that all dust particles are not dust particles and therefore they are called dust particles. He teaches that all chiliocosms are not chiliocosms and therefore they are called chiliocosms. Subhuti, what do you think? Is the thus reached one to be recognized through the 32 marks? No, world-honored one, he is not. The thus reached one is not to be recognized through the 32 marks, because what the thus reached one calls the 32 marks are not marks and therefore they are called the 32 marks. Subhuti, if there is a good man or a good woman who gives away his or her lives as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges river, his or her merit thus gained does not exceed that of one who knows how to hold and teach even one gatha of 4 lines of this sutra. Chapter 14. The text. At that time Subhuti, listening to the sutra and understanding deeply its meaning, and filled with tears of gratitude, said to the Buddha, "It is wonderful, indeed, world-honored one, that the Buddha teaches us a sutra full of deep meaning. Such a sutra has never been heard by me, even with the eye of wisdom acquired in my past lives. World-honored one, if there is a person who listens to this sutra and acquires a pure faith in it, he will have a true insight. He is known as having achieved the most wonderful virtue. World-honored one, what is known as true insight is not true insight and therefore it is called true insight." Interpretation. The Buddha saw the twofold. That is a wonderful vision. Subhuti, even with the eyes of wisdom he acquired in his past lives, did not see the twofold. What is known as true insight is not true insight and therefore it is called true insight. Firstly, insight of material, for example insight of earth as true element of a pot or insight of the elusiveness of things, is considered as true insight. Then, insight of material is not true insight. Finally, insight of nothing appearing in material is true insight. The text. World-honored one, it is not difficult for me to believe, to understand, and to hold this sutra, but in the ages to come, in the next 500 years, if there are persons who listen to this sutra, then believe, understand and hold it, they will belong to the rarest persons. Why? For they do not have any idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a soul. For what reason? The idea of a self is not an idea, the idea of a person, a living being or a soul is not an idea. For what reason? They are Buddhas who are free from all kinds of ideas. Interpretation. The insight of the twofold is the rarest. An idea of a self, a person, a living being or a metaphysical reality as soul is still an idea that belongs to the material sphere, and therefore it is not an idea of nothing. All Buddhas are free from such ideas. The text. The Buddha said to Subhuti, "It is just as you say. If there is a person who, listening to this sutra, is neither frightened nor disturbed, he must be an extremely rare person." Why? Subhuti, the thus reached one teaches that the highest gone to the other shore wisdom is not the highest gone to the other shore wisdom, and therefore it is called the highest gone to the other shore wisdom. Subhuti, the thus reached one teaches that the gone to the other shore patience is not the gone to the other shore patience, and therefore it is called the gone to the other shore patience. Why? Subhuti, when, anciently, my body was cut into pieces by the king of Kalinga, I did not have any idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a soul. Why? Because when my body was cut into pieces, if I had had any idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a soul, I would have felt anger and ill will. Interpretation. The saying that material is empty or inessential is a saying that can easily make people frightened and disturbed. Material is there, it is a reality right in front of us. How can we say that it is empty? Are we not crazy? How can we utter such a saying? It is indeed frightening and disturbing. But be patient. Look at that chalice. Does a piece of glass make a chalice? A piece of glass can be a piece of glass, an ashtray. So, there must be something else in a piece of glass so that it is a chalice. Please keep tranquil and see that a piece of glass does not make a chalice. The Buddha does not say that a piece of glass is not real, the Buddha says that a piece of glass does not make a chalice. The Buddha says that what is different from a piece of glass or nothing makes a chalice. In the same way, the body or the bodily marks do not make the thus reached one. What is different from the body or the bodily marks or nothing or gone to the other shore wisdom makes the thus reached one. If we do not have an idea of material, that is to say of a self, a person, a living being or a soul, we do not, even our body is cut into pieces, feel anger and ill will. The gone to the other shore patience is not the gone to the other shore patience, and therefore it is called the gone to the other shore patience. Firstly, the gone to the other shore patience in the material world is the gone to the other shore patience. Indeed, there is no gone to the other shore here, the shore is always the material shore or this shore. Gone to the other shore must be wrongly explained, for example, as seeing A is B, C, D, E, and F so that we can say gone to the other shore in the material shore, then, the gone to the other shore patience in the material shore is not the gone to the other shore patience. Finally, the gone to the other shore patience in the sphere of nothing is the gone to the other shore patience. The text. Subhuti, I remember, in my past 500 lifetimes, I was a patient sage and, during those times, I had no idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a soul. Subhuti, you should detach yourself from all ideas and rouse the desire for the supreme perfect enlightenment. You should nourish the ideas that do not dwell on color, you should nourish the ideas that do not dwell on sound, smell, taste, touch or object. Whatever thought you may have, it should not dwell on anything. If a thought dwells on anything, this dwelling is not dwelling. Therefore, the Buddha teaches that when a bodhisattva practices charity, he should not dwell on anything. Subhuti, the reason a bodhisattva practices charity is to benefit all beings. The thus reached one teaches that all ideas are not ideas, and again all beings are not beings. Interpretation. Patience is one of 6 perfections. A patient wise man, sage, is the one who has reached the other shore, far from the ideas of a self, a person, a living being and a soul. An idea that depends on anything in the material world is not a dwelling in nothing. All thoughts on the material world are only nihilism in the meaning of there is not a thing about nothing. An idea of material is not an idea of nothing and, again, a living being as body is not a living being as presence of nothing. Charity is one of 6 perfections. The reason a bodhisattva practices charity is to benefit all beings. We practice charity to benefit other persons, not to benefit ourselves. When we practice charity, we should not think about ourselves, about rewards to ourselves. The text. Subhuti, the thus reached one is the one who speaks of things as they are, the one who speaks what is true, the one who speaks in accordance with reality, the one whose words are truthful, the one who does not speak falsehood and the one whose words are not equivocal. Interpretation. The Buddha was afraid that Subhuti did not have faith in his words and therefore he said, the thus reached one teaches that all ideas are not ideas, and again all beings are not beings. Subhuti, the thus reached one is the one who speaks of things as they are, the one who speaks what is true, the one who speaks in accordance with reality, the one whose words are truthful, the one who does not speak falsehood and the one whose words are not equivocal. The Buddha's words are not equivocal, but in fact, they are often misunderstood. The words of the sages are too far beyond the human mind. The text. Subhuti, the Dharma attained by the thus reached one is neither truth nor falsehood. Interpretation. The Dharma here is the supreme perfect enlightenment. So, it is the truth. When we speak of truth and falsehood, we stand on this shore. On the other shore there are no truth and no falsehood. Correctly speaking, on the other shore there is only truth and there is no falsehood. But if there is no falsehood, there is no truth. Truth is the opposite of falsehood. The Dharma is beyond truth and falsehood. True and false can be understood as real and unreal. Real and unreal speak about a material thing. Because the Dharma is different from a thing, it is neither real nor unreal. Correctly speaking, it is real only. But if there is no unreal, there is no real. The Dharma is beyond real and unreal. The text. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva practices charity while nourishing an idea relying on a thing, he is like someone walking in the dark and seeing nothing. If a bodhisattva practices charity while not nourishing an idea relying on a thing, he is like someone walking with eyes in the sunlight and seeing all kinds of shapes and colors. Interpretation. Practicing charity is an image of seeking the supreme perfect enlightenment. Practicing charity or seeking the supreme perfect enlightenment while relying on a thing is like walking in the dark. Walking in the dark is not seeing nothing as well as things, because nothing makes true things. Practicing charity or seeking the supreme perfect enlightenment while not relying on a thing is like walking in the sunlight and seeing all kinds of shapes and colors. Nothing is the source of light in which we see all shapes and colors. Shapes and colors indicate things. In their beauty, not seeing nothing is not only not seeing nothing but also not seeing things. Jesus said that his words are the light that lightens men living in darkness. The text. Subhuti, if in times to come good men and good women hold and recite this sutra, they will be seen and recognized by the thus reached one, by his Buddhan knowledge, and they will acquire immeasurable and infinite merit. Chapter 15. The text. Subhuti, if there is a good man or a good woman who in the morning by charity gives up his or her bodies as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges river, and again at noon by charity gives up his or her bodies as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges river, and again in the evening by charity gives up his or her bodies as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges river, and continues thus for countless thousands of ages, and if there is another person who, listening to this sutra, accepts it with a believing heart, the merit acquired by the latter far exceeds that of the former. How much more the merit of one who copies, holds, learns, recites, and expounds it to others. Subhuti, in sum, there is in this sutra immeasurable, infinite, and incomprehensible merit. The thus reached one has taught this sutra for those who have given rise to the mind of the Great Vehicle and the mind of the Supreme Vehicle. If there are persons who hold, recite, and expound this sutra to others, they are all recognized by the thus reached one and acquire immeasurable, infinite, and incomprehensible merit. Such persons carry the supreme perfect enlightenment attained by the thus reached one. Why? Subhuti, those who desire inferior doctrines are attached to the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. They are not able to hear, hold, recite, and expound to others this sutra. Subhuti, wherever this sutra is kept, there all beings, persons, gods, asuras, come and worship it. That place is called a Buddha Chaitya, the temple of worship and offerings, where the devotees gather around, scatter flowers and burn incense. Interpretation. Confucius had to choose between his body and the way, he would choose the way. Here the Buddha said that giving in charity countless bodies is far from being equal to having faith in the sutra. Which other image can express more clearly the Buddha's love of this sutra? Copying. In ancient times there was no printing, copying is a way of handing down to others. The Hinayana vehicle is the small vehicle that can carry only the owner, it cannot carry the living beings. The Mahayana vehicle is the great vehicle that can carry not only the owner but also the living beings. The Buddha is on the level of the supreme vehicle. The supreme vehicle is the Buddha vehicle because it can carry even bodhisattvas, it is higher than the great vehicle. That is the place of the supreme perfect enlightenment. Some persons interpret that the inferior doctrines indicate the small vehicle. The text says that those who desire inferior doctrines are attached to the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. The small vehicle is not attached to such an idea. So, we can explain that inferior doctrines indicate the thoughts other than Buddhism. Chapter 16. The text. Again, Subhuti, there will be some good men and good women who will be despised for their holding and reciting this sutra. This is due to the evil karma of their impure deeds of their past lives, but because they are despised in the present life, the evil karma of their past lives will be destroyed, and they are able to attain the supreme liberation. Interpretation. According to the Buddha's prediction, there will be some good men and good women who will be despised for their holding and reciting this sutra. In our times they are despised for they are old-fashioned and do not know that God is dead. According to the Buddha, this is the result of their misdeeds of their past lives. However, because they are despised in the present life, the evil karma of their past lives will be destroyed, and they are able to attain nirvana. The text. Subhuti, as I remember, in my past lives innumerable ages ago, when I was with Dipankara Buddha, I met 84,000 multi-millions of the Buddhas and I made offerings to them and respectfully served them all, none of them was passed by me. If again, at the time of the collapse of the Dharma, there is a person who holds and recites this sutra, his merit exceeds 100,000 10 million times the merit I acquired. His merit is beyond calculation, beyond comparison. Interpretation. Here is another example about the infinite preciousness of this sutra. The time of the collapse of the Dharma is the time in which the Dharma is despised. The Buddha did not say what time it is, maybe it is the Buddha's time and maybe some time in the future. Our present time of technology is a time of the collapse of the Dharma. What is called the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment is out of view, out of discussion and out of thought. What is called civilization is indeed not civilization, in other words, in what is called civilization there is the collapse of the Dharma. Speaking according to Heidegger, the history of what is called civilization is the history of the decadence of the Dharma. So, in our present time whoever believes in this sutra and expounds it to others gains the merit that is beyond enumeration, beyond similarity. The text. Subhuti, if at the time of the collapse of the Dharma, there are good men and good women who hold and recite this sutra, the merit they acquire goes beyond calculation. If I enumerate it in detail, those who listen to me will lose their heads and become suspicious and disbelieving. They cannot believe in the incomprehensible meaning of this sutra as well as in the incomprehensible rewards of the holding and reciting this sutra. Interpretation. The Buddha was wrapped in this sutra. He saw the twofold and was keen on that truth. The Buddha is one of the few sages who saw the twofold. Chapter 17. The text. At that time, Subhuti said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, may I ask you again? In case good men and good women ever raise the mind for reaching the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment, how should they abide in it and how should they keep their thoughts under control?" The Buddha replied, "Good men and good women who ever raise the mind for reaching the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment should do it as follows. We must lead all living beings to the shore of liberation, but when all living beings have reached that shore, we do not see any living being is liberated. Why? Subhuti, if a bodhisattva is still attached to the idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a soul, he is not a bodhisattva yet. Why? Because, Subhuti, there is indeed nobody who is able to raise the mind for reaching the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. Interpretation. If we still think about self, we are not able to raise the mind for reaching the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. We must be liberated from the idea of self in order to raise the mind for reaching the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? In ancient times, when he was with Dipankara Buddha, did the thus reached one attain the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment? No, world-honored one. According to what I understand from your teaching, the thus reached one, when living with Dipankara Buddha, did not attain what is called the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. The Buddha said, "Right you are. Right you are. There is nothing called the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment that the thus reached one attains. If there was such a Dharma, Dipankara Buddha would have not given me the prediction, in a future time you will become a Buddha called Shakyamuni. This prediction was made because there is, in fact, nothing that can be attained that can be called the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. Interpretation. As we have said, the supreme perfect enlightenment is not a thing that lies at some place, and we can grasp it. Dipankara Buddha predicted the thus reached one would in a future time become a Buddha called Shakyamuni. The mind of the thus reached one would change and would in a future time become a Buddha. If the supreme perfect enlightenment is a thing that can be grasped, the thus reached one could grasp it immediately and he did not need to wait until a future time. The way is not a fixed thing, the way is the event that happens in the course of time, and it needs time to reach perfection. Everyone must understand that his, her, way develops gradually and it happens differently each moment in his course of life. The text. Why is this? Because thus reached one, Tathagata, is the thusness, Tathata, of all things. If someone says that the thus reached one attains the supreme perfect enlightenment, he is wrong. There is nothing that can be attained that can be called the supreme perfect enlightenment. Subhuti, the Dharma that the thus reached one has attained as the supreme perfect enlightenment is neither real nor elusive. Therefore, the thus reached one says that all things are Buddha things. Subhuti, what I call all things are, in fact, not things, and therefore they are called all things. Subhuti, that can be compared to a great human body. Subhuti said, what the thus reached one calls a great human body is, in fact, not a great human body, and therefore it is called a great human body. Interpretation. Why is it that because the thus reached one is the thusness, suchness, of all things, he cannot attain what is called the supreme perfect enlightenment? The thus reached one is the thusness of all things. The thus reached one is only the thus reached one when he appears in a thing. If there is no thing, there is no thus reached one. The thus reached one needs a thing as place of his appearance. And because there are many things, there are many appearances of the thus reached one. His appearance in this thing is different from his appearance in that thing. Therefore, there is not a fixed thing that is called the supreme perfect enlightenment. The Book of Changes has 64 hexagrams as 64 images of the way and then 386 lines as 386 images of the way. According to this paragraph, there is the thus reached one when there is a thing. That means that there is the thus reached one in this world and there is the supreme perfect enlightenment in this world. So the supreme perfect enlightenment appears in each thing at each moment. It is not a fixed separate thing that the thus reached one can attain. However, we often say, attain the supreme perfect enlightenment. So, when the Buddha says he cannot attain the supreme perfect enlightenment, we have to think he wants to say that it is so in the case the supreme perfect enlightenment is understood as a fixed separate thing. If the Dharma that the thus reached one has attained is the supreme perfect enlightenment, this Dharma is neither real nor elusive. Real here means graspable, existing, and elusive means ungraspable, non-existing. These real and elusive are spoken in the point of view of a material thing. Nothing in a thing is not graspable, it is neither real nor elusive in the above meaning. Because the thus reached one is the thusness of a thing in its essence is a Buddha thing. A thing which is not the place of the appearance of the Buddhahood is not a true thing. A laboring man who is not a man harboring the Buddhahood is not a true man. A Buddha thing is the name of a thing in its essence. A holy man who is a man harboring the Buddhahood is a true man. What I call all things are, in fact, not things, and therefore they are called all things. Firstly, before meditation things as material are things, then, during meditation things as material are not things, finally, after meditation things as Buddha things are things. We can say, all things which are not material things are things. What the thus reached one calls a great human body is, in fact, not a great human body, and therefore it is called a great human body. Firstly, a great human body as flesh is a great human body, then, a great human body as flesh is not a great human body, finally, a Buddha human body is a human great body. We can say, a great human body which is not a great human flesh body is a great human body. The text. So it is, Subhuti, with the Bodhisattvas. If a Bodhisattva thinks, I will liberate all living beings, he is indeed not yet a Bodhisattva. Why? Subhuti, there is no fixed thing called Bodhisattva. Therefore the Buddha says all things are without a self, a person, a living being or a soul. Subhuti, if a Bodhisattva thinks, I have to adorn a Buddha land, he is not yet a Bodhisattva. Why? What the thus reached one calls adorning a Buddha land is not adorning a Buddha land, and therefore it is called adorning a Buddha land. Subhuti, if a Bodhisattva thoroughly understands non-self and non-thing, he is considered by the thus reached one as a true Bodhisattva. Interpretation. I means an individual self. He who thinks of his ego is not a Bodhisattva yet. There is not a separate fixed thing called Bodhisattva. Therefore a Bodhisattva cannot say I will liberate all living beings. A Bodhisattva should have a deep insight into non-self. A non-self is a self in whom nothing is essential. A self in whom nothing is essential is not a separate ordinary self anymore. So can we say something more about it? The answer is, no, we cannot, because non-self is beyond language, beyond thinking and discussing. The same is true of non-thing. A Bodhisattva does have to adorn a Buddha land because he is already an adorning of a Buddha land. Chapter 18. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the thus reached one have the physical eye? Subhuti replied, yes, world-honored one, he does. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the thus reached one have the celestial eye? Yes, world-honored one, he does. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the thus reached one have the eye of insight? Yes, world-honored one, he does. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the thus reached one have the eye of wisdom? Yes, world-honored one, he does. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the thus reached one have the Buddha eye? Yes, world-honored one, he does. Interpretation. The physical eye, the eye that sees the material thing. The celestial eye, the eye that sees the celestial world, the abstract things. The eye of insight, the eye that sees deeply into things and sees the inessentiality of material. The eye of wisdom, the eye of the gone to the other shore wisdom that sees nothing. The Buddha eye, the eye that sees Buddha things. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the thus reached one say the grains of sand in the Ganges river are sand? Yes, world-honored one, the thus reached one says they are sand. Subhuti, what do you think? If there are as many Ganges rivers as there are the grains of sand in the Ganges river, and then if there are as many Buddha lands as there are the grains of sand in the Ganges rivers, are the Buddha lands many? Very many, world-honored one. The Buddha said, Subhuti, however many living beings there are in all these Buddha lands, the thus reached one knows all thoughts of those living beings. Why? Subhuti, the thus reached one teaches that all thoughts are not thoughts, and therefore they are called thoughts. Why? Subhuti, the past mind cannot be grasped, the present mind cannot be grasped, and the future mind cannot be grasped. Interpretation. Suppose there are countless living beings and therefore there are countless thoughts. Even though they are so many, the thus reached one knows all those thoughts. Why? Because they are either thoughts about material, self, person, living being, soul, or thoughts about nothing. All thoughts are not thoughts, and therefore they are called thoughts. Firstly, thoughts of material, and what is derived from material, are thoughts, then, thoughts of material, and what is derived from material, are not thoughts, finally, thoughts of nothing are thoughts. Thoughts of nothing are, whether they are past or present or future, not graspable, because they appear in images that change every instant. There are countless thoughts of nothingness. They are as many as living beings and then as many as all thoughts of all living beings. Chapter 19. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone fills the 3,000 chiliocosms with the 7 precious jewels, and then gives them in charity, would his merit be much? World-honored one, his merit would be very much. Subhuti, if that merit was really much, the thus reached one would not say, it would be much. Because that merit is not real, the thus reached one says, it would be much. Interpretation. We stand in front of a difficulty. If the merit is real, we cannot say much merit, because the merit is not real, we can say much merit. Real, no much merit, unreal, much merit. Subhuti says his merit would be very much. The thus reached one says if that merit is really much, the thus reached one would not say it would be much. Much belongs to the material sphere. Because the merit is counted in the material sphere, it can be said to be much. But the material sphere is not the true sphere. If the merit is placed in the true sphere of nothing, it cannot be counted as much. For that reason, there is the saying if that merit was really much, the thus reached one would not say, it would be much. We can understand that Subhuti says about merit on this shore. The giver in charity often seeks merit on this shore, fame, reward, achievement, and on this shore there are many kinds of merit. However, the material shore is unreal. Unreal here means not helping to go to the other shore. Therefore, if that merit was really much, the thus reached one would not say, it would be much. Charity does not bring merit on this shore. Charity does not cure diseases, bring wealth, help to get married with one's lover, help to get a good job. Giving in charity with the hope of a reward on this shore is like diving to look for the moon at the bottom of the ocean. This shore is an ocean of sorrows, why searching for merit there? We should remember that merit as a royal throne, the Buddha cast it away. If charity does not bring merit, why is donation in the Buddha's teaching? Because it helps in going to the other shore. Or merit on the other shore is real. Therefore, when the thus reached one says much merit, he means much merit on the other shore or much merit in going to the other shore. The thus reached one wants to cast light into Subhuti's answer. The Diamond Sutra talks about much merit many times, and it is thought as much merit on the other shore. Chapter 20. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the thus reached one be seen by his complete physical body? No, world-honored one, the thus reached one cannot be seen by his complete physical body. Why? What the thus reached one calls a complete physical body is in fact not a complete physical body, and therefore it is called a complete physical body. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the thus reached one be seen by his complete bodily marks? No, world-honored one, the thus reached one cannot be seen by his complete bodily marks. Why? What the thus reached one calls the complete bodily marks are, in fact, not the complete bodily marks, and therefore they are called the complete bodily marks. Interpretation. Ordinary people think that the complete physical body makes a man. But when they become wiser, they realize that such thinking is wrong. The complete physical body or the complete bodily marks need nothing so that they can be considered as complete. When people realize that the complete physical body alone or the complete bodily marks alone do not make the complete physical body or the complete bodily marks, they know that nothing is needed in the complete physical body or the complete bodily marks so that they can be the complete physical body or the complete bodily marks. Chapter 21. The text. Subhuti. You should not say that the thus reached one has the idea that I teach the Dharma. You should not think so. Why? Whoever says that the thus reached one has the Dharma to teach slanders the Buddha because he does not understand my teaching. Subhuti, the teaching of the Dharma is indeed not the teaching of the Dharma, and therefore it is called the teaching of the Dharma. Interpretation. There is no teaching of the Dharma because there is no Dharma to teach if the Dharma is understood as nothing. If the Dharma is understood as the raft that leads to nothing, the Buddha has the Dharma to teach. The teaching of the Dharma that is not teaching of the Dharma understood as something or as nothing is the teaching of the Dharma understood as raft that leads to nothing. The text. At that time Subhuti asked, if in the future there are living beings who hear this sutra, will they believe in it? The Buddha said, Subhuti, those living beings are neither living beings nor non-living beings. Why? Subhuti, what the thus reached one calls living beings are truly not living beings. Interpretation. The living beings can be living beings as well as non-living beings. Therefore, we can say that they are not living beings neither non-living beings. For ignorance the living beings on this shore are living beings, however, for enlightenment only the living beings on the other shore are living beings. It is possible to say, the living beings who are not living beings of this shore are, true, living beings. Chapter 22. The text. Subhuti asked the Buddha, World-honored one, is there, in the supreme perfect enlightenment the thus reached one has attained, nothing to be attained? The Buddha said, it is so, Subhuti. I have attained nothing in the supreme perfect enlightenment, and therefore it is called the supreme perfect enlightenment. Interpretation. The supreme perfect enlightenment is not a thing. We can say that it is an unfixed or flowing state of mind. Therefore, there is nothing in it to be attained. And it is because there is nothing to be attained in it that it is the supreme perfect enlightenment. If there was something to be attained in it, it would not be the supreme perfect enlightenment. Chapter 23. The text. Furthermore, Subhuti, the Dharma that is unbiased, neither high nor low, is called the supreme perfect enlightenment. Because if a person practices everything good without depending on the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul, he attains the supreme perfect enlightenment. Subhuti, what is called good is not good, and therefore it is called good. Interpretation. The Dharma is the supreme perfect enlightenment. Dharma is a name, it means way, road, manner, a manner of presence. Dharma is equivalent to the way in the Chinese thought. The supreme perfect enlightenment is the Dharma or way of presence of the mind. This Dharma or way of presence plus material, wood, make a thing, bridge. This Dharma is unbiased to all things, it does not make the distinction between the high things and the low things. It is the thusness of all things, and it does not deny any single thing. That is the reason why it is called the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment. There are many things, but there is only one Dharma. The Dharma is universal, common to all things. But it has different images. What is called good is not good, and therefore it is called good. Firstly, material is good, then, material is not good, finally, the Dharma, which appears in material, is good. Good is good for peaceful dwelling. Chapter 24. The text. Subhuti, if someone fills the 3,000 chiliocosms with the 7 precious jewels as high as Mount Sumeru, and then gives them away in charity, his merit will not compare to 100th part, 1,000th part, 1,000,000,000th part, an incalculable part of the merit of someone who holds, recites, and expounds to others this cutting-off diamond gone to the other shore Wisdom Sutra. Chapter 25. The text. Subhuti, you should not think that the thus reached one has the idea, I will bring all living beings to enlightenment. Subhuti, you should not think so. Why? Indeed, there is no living being that can be liberated by the thus reached one. If the thus reached one liberates beings, he is attached to the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. Subhuti, the thus reached one says that a self is not a self, but an ordinary person thinks that there is a self. Subhuti, an ordinary person is not an ordinary person, and therefore he is called an ordinary person. Interpretation. An ordinary person thinks that the bodily marks make a self. The Buddha sees that the self as bodily marks is not the self. The Dharma, the Supreme Perfect Enlightenment, in the bodily marks is the self. An ordinary person is not an ordinary person, and therefore he is called an ordinary person. An ordinary person thinks that he has his self as bodily marks. Indeed, these bodily marks do not make an ordinary person. It is the Dharma that makes an ordinary person. The Dharma is present in everyone. A peasant daily sees his shoes, in his sight of his shoes is his sight of the Dharma. But the peasant himself daily does not know that he has a sight of the Dharma. It is possible to say that a peasant has a sorrowful self. The sorrowful self is, for the Buddha, not a self. It is possible say, a peasant who is not a peasant as he thinks is a peasant. Chapter 26. The text. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the thus reached one be seen through his 32 marks? Yes, the thus reached one can be seen through his 32 marks. The Buddha said to Subhuti, if the thus reached one can be seen through his 32 marks, then a Chakravartin is also a thus reached one. Subhuti said to the Buddha, world-honored one, as I understand your teaching, the thus reached one cannot be seen through his 32 marks. At that time the world-honored one uttered the following stanzas. Those who see me through my colored form, and seek me through my voice, are traveling on a wrong way, and cannot see the thus reached one. Interpretation. The 32 bodily marks do not make the thus reached one. The colored form and the voice do not make the thus reached one. This is the easiest example for material does not make a thing. A Chakravartin was used to denote a universal monarch. In the lifetime of the Buddha there were 16 major separate republics and kingdoms in India. A Chakravartin stood for a political ruler who brought together those republics and kingdoms. He was supposed to be born with the 32 marks of a great man. Even though he had those 32 marks, he was not the thus reached one. Chapter 27. The text. Subhuti, you should not think that the thus reached one has attained the supreme perfect enlightenment without depending on his 32 marks. Subhuti, you should not think so. You should not think that a person who raises the mind for reaching the supreme perfect enlightenment must think all things are null. You should not think so. A person who raises the mind for reaching the supreme perfect enlightenment does not say all things are null. Interpretation. All things are real, all things are not null. A person who raises the mind for reaching the supreme perfect enlightenment does not nullify all things. He sees only that material does not make a thing, and in the same way the bodily marks do not make the thus reached one. The thus reached one is the thusness of all things. If we nullify all things, what is the thus reached one the thusness of? The bodily marks do not make the thus reached one. But if there are no bodily marks, there is not the thus reached one. We cannot destroy the bodily marks. What makes the thus reached one needs the bodily marks as the place of his appearance. We can say that the thus reached one is the combination of the bodily marks and nothing, with nothing as the essential part. Nothing is the essential part, but the bodily marks are the foundation of the appearance of nothing. Nothing and the bodily marks are two different realities, but they appear together at the same time to make the thus reached one. This paragraph is a clear proof of the wrongness of the explanation of elusive, impermanent as null and of the rightness of the explanation of elusive, impermanent as inessential. Chapter 28. The text. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva piles up the 7 precious jewels, as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges river, in all the 3,000 chiliocosms and gives them in charity, his merit will be inferior to the merit of a bodhisattva who recognizes and believes that all things are selfless and do not possess their own essence. Why is that, Subhuti? Because bodhisattvas do not seek for the rewards of merit. Subhuti asked, World-honored one, why do bodhisattvas not seek for the rewards of merit? Subhuti, a bodhisattva who acquires merit is not caught in the idea of merit. That is the reason why the thus reached one says that bodhisattvas do not seek for the rewards of merit. Interpretation. Selflessness is no own nature. But what is selflessness or no nature? Self, like person, living being or soul, belongs to material. An ordinary person sees material as the self or nature of a thing. A bodhisattva sees a thing, in its essence, is not that self or nature. A thing, in its essence, is nothing. Therefore, the Buddha said that a bodhisattva does not seek the rewards of merit. Why does selflessness lead to not seeking the rewards of merit? If we do not have an idea of a self, we are not caught in the idea of rewards of merit. An ordinary person who does an act of charity usually seeks rewards of merit for his self. A bodhisattva is not caught in such an idea. A bodhisattva does an act of charity without seeking rewards of merit. Here merit and rewards of merit denote merit and rewards of merit on this shore. Chapter 29. The text. Subhuti, if someone says that the thus reached one comes, goes, sits, and lies down, that person does not understand my teaching. Why? Because the thus reached one comes from nowhere, goes nowhere, therefore, he is called the thus reached one. Interpretation. Speaking according to the other shore, the thus reached one does not come, go, sit, and lie down. If the thus reached one is not a thing, whether it is a self, a person, a living being or a soul how can we say he comes, goes, sits, and lies down? The thus reached one comes from nowhere and goes nowhere. The thus reached one is the thusness or the true essence of a thing, but the thus reached one is not an object that is outside a thing and enters a thing. That true essence resides in a thing. For us, that true essence appears as we see it. But this saying can fall in the danger that our mind creates the true essence. Our mind does not create the thusness, our mind only responds to the voice of the thusness. The problem is, how are we able to hear the voice of the thusness? The Buddha's teaching is the raft that leads us to hearing the voice of the thusness. But this saying falls, in its turn, in the danger of the idea that the thusness is at some place and calls us. It is true that language cannot express fully the idea. Chapter 30. The text. Subhuti, if a good man or a good woman grinds the 3,000 chiliocosms into dust particles, do you think there would be many of these particles? World-honored one, there would be many dust particles. Why? If these dust particles were real, then the Buddha would not say they would be the dust particles. What the Buddha calls the dust particles are not dust particles, and therefore they are called the dust particles. World-honored one, what the thus reached one calls the 3,000 chiliocosms are not the 3,000 chiliocosms, and therefore they are called the 3,000 chiliocosms. Why? If the chiliocosms were real, they would be compounds of the dust particles. What the thus reached one calls a compound is not a compound, therefore it is called a compound. Subhuti, what is called a compound is only a conventional way of speaking. It is not real. Only an ordinary person is caught up in conventional words. Interpretation. We grind a chiliocosm into dust particles. Is a chiliocosm a compound of the dust particles? First, we speak of dust particles. Dust particles as material themselves are not dust particles. In order that a dust particle can appear as dust particle, it must harbor the Dharma. Without the Dharma, that material dust particle is indeed only a particle of material without name, temporarily said to be in chaos. Secondly, we speak of chiliocosms. Chiliocosms as material themselves are not chiliocosms. In order that a chiliocosm can appear as chiliocosm, it must harbor the Dharma. A chiliocosm is a compound of many dust particles. A compound can be understood as a compound of dust particles. But it is not so, dust particles do not make a compound. A compound has its Dharma, and this Dharma makes it a compound. Therefore, a chiliocosm is not a compound of dust particles. A chiliocosm has its Dharma. The Dharma of a chiliocosm is not the combination of the Dharmas of the dust particles. Therefore, a compound is only a conventional word. A chiliocosm is a separate thing, which is not made by the combination of dust particles. A is not a compound of B, C, D, E, and F. A has its own Dharma. Only an ordinary person is caught in a conventional word. Only an ordinary person thinks that A is a compound of B, C, D, E, and F. If these dust particles were real, then the Buddha would not say they would be the dust particles. Dust particles are understood as material alone. There are not such dust particles. If the chiliocosms were real, they would be compounds of the dust particles. Chiliocosms are understood as material only, there are not such chiliocosms. Chapter 31. The text. If someone says that the Buddha teaches the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul, does that person understand my teaching? No, world-honored one, he does not. Why? What the thus reached one calls the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul is not the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul, and therefore it is called the idea of a self, a person, a living being or a soul. Subhuti, if someone raises the mind for reaching the supreme perfect enlightenment, he should know thus about things, should see thus about things, should believe thus about things. Subhuti, what the thus reached one calls the idea of a thing is not the idea of a thing, and therefore it is called the idea of a thing. Chapter 32. The text. Subhuti, if there is a good man or a good woman who piles all the 3,000 chiliocosms with the 7 precious jewels and gives them in charity, and if there is a person who raises the mind to hold, recite, and expound to others this sutra or even a gatha of 4 lines of this sutra, the merit of the latter far exceeds that of the former. So how should we expound this sutra to others? We should not be caught up in form, but we should have insight into the thusness of things. Why? All existing things are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows. Like dew, like lightning. Look at them as such. Interpretation. After having read the 4 above lines, we stand before the thought of the elusiveness of all things. Look at all things as dreams, as illusions, as bubbles, as shadows, as dew, as lightning. All things disappear as a horse running past the window, faster than a flower blossoming in the morning and fading in the evening. If the Buddha says that all things are elusive, he will lead us to seek for the eternal and immortal sphere. This life is not worth to live, let us seek for an eternal life in some heavenly world. Such an interpretation has the following advantage: it helps people to become less attached to the material world, it lessens the heavy burden of money, fame, and beauty on their shoulders. However, it has the following disadvantage: it leads people to the idea that the Buddha teaches them to abandon this world or this ocean of suffering. If the Buddha says that the thus reached one is the thusness of all things, how can we say that the Buddha hates this world or this ocean of suffering? Indeed, the Buddha teaches to save this world and to make this world cease to be the ocean of suffering. The Buddha seeks to transform the world of suffering into a heavenly world of bliss. So, to leave the world of suffering behind is not to get rid of or nullify it, but to transform it into the heavenly world of bliss. In order to do it, we should not nullify this world, but consolidate it by nothing. So look at all things as dreams, as illusions, as bubbles, as shadows, as dew, as lightning is. Consider all things in their material aspect as inessential, nothing should be everything. The thusness, nothing, of all things resides in the colored forms appearing in front of us. The text. After having heard the Buddha speaking the sutra, the elder Subhuti, the bhikkhus, the bhikkhunis, laymen, laywomen, gods, human beings, and asuras, all rejoiced greatly, they believed it and put it in practice. Interpretation. Believers leave the material sphere and enter the sphere of nothing. Leaving means not attaching to and does not mean nullifying.